RNA especially. They compare those and then they make this type of conclusion. Yeah.
Do Archaea undergo conjugation?
Yeah. Yeah. Not all of these organisms do in both groups, but specific variations. Even eukaryote does. So we'll see in the next chapter. All right, some stuff for you guys to have fun with and work on your memories. Is that? Huh? Did I do that to you guys?
No.
Practice memory? Okay, won't do that. All right, these are a bunch of branches of these two groups, okay? Major categories that goes under Archaea and then domain bacteria, but we're not going to bother you with these categories. Just look at it, it's a nice radiogram. What I'd like you guys to remember, okay, so you said majority are bacteria, others are Archaea. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the Archaea. Some of these Archaea prokaryotes are found in very extreme environments. Okay, so we're going to look at these extreme environments. One is really salty areas. Remember, if you put your cells in a salty solution, what happens to it?
Yeah, shrivel.
Shrink, yeah, it's a hypertonic environment, you lose water, die, those cells will die. But these guys actually thrive in these environments, okay? They need the 15 to 20% salinity to be able to survive. These areas are full of this type of bacteria, they have pigments. That's why this picture is taken. And seawater is about 3% salinity, so this just gives you idea in terms of how much salt we need in these areas and how much salt they can tolerate. Okay, many of these can do photosynthesis, so they have pigments, or they can color pigments that they do, but they have been able to adapt to this environment and actually use it to another one. Extremophils. Phil means love, comes from philosophy, okay? So they love high temperatures. This is one example. They like sulfur too, so they live in areas that water could be boiling under high pressure. Obviously, you need lots of special adaptations for this, right? Most cells cannot tolerate that temperature. Proteins denature, enzymes will denature, the membrane will break apart, all kinds of problems that can take place if you're under this much pressure and that much temperature. And obviously these guys can do that. All right? Another group of Archaea, you have mechanogens. These are anaerobes. And a lot of times you find it in digestive system of other organisms or swamps, marshes, and things like that, which there is low amount of oxygen. And the thing that they have in common is one of their important base material is methane. Okay, methane gas. And instead of using oxygen, they use hydrogen, H2. Okay. And again, important greenhouse gas. Okay. Methane is a greenhouse gas, the same as CO2, absorbs heat. And this is an issue in relation to global warming. We lots of cows that they fart a lot, right? And that is basically a lot of it is methane because of the bacteria in their guts. And it's helping them break down the grass, but at the same time creates the gas, and so they have to release it. In swamps and things like that, some smarter people use that energy in the sense that gas for energy purposes, and they recycle it. You have a lot of methane that is stuck in the Arctic ice. And that's another worry that environmental scientists have. I think you mentioned that, you were talking about it, right? Because as these ice that are melting, they're releasing the methane into the atmosphere, and that's another greenhouse gas. So that would be a positive what? Feedback, they call it, a positive feedback. So you're melting some gas, some ice, and that releases the gas, and so the gas is adding to the global warming in a sense, okay? So we don't know how fast this could happen. We don't know how much of this, as you mentioned, is stored in these ice, and you can take some of those ice, and actually I've seen individuals putting matches to it, and it kind of burns that much gas in some areas. Okay, so if that is released at a fast rate, it's going to have a positive feedback on the temperature. All right, some of these organisms are pathogen. We're talking about generally now in both groups, and but a lot of times you guys may not be doing that as much, but general public, as soon as you talk about bacteria, they're worried about diseases, pathogens, and things like that. Really, when you look at the number of species or strains of bacteria on this planet, which we don't know how many there are, only a few are, relatively speaking, cause what? Diseases. Majority are harmless. Majority actually are very important. Bacteria is very important to the ecosystems. What do?
Decompose.
Decomposers, okay. Also, they convert, we'll talk about it next semester more, nitrogen into a form that plants can use. Nitrogen fixing bacteria. So, they have a huge, they are huge recyclers and recycle materials along with fungi. Okay. And if you didn't have bacteria and fungi, some ecologists joke around sometimes that you have to jump, if you go to a forest, you have to jump over lots of rats and all kinds of other animals that are dead, just follow them. But as soon as they die, what happens? Bacteria or fungus start to recycle the materials and get it back to the system. All right, the pathogenic ones, generally, this is the mechanism that causes problem. You have exotoxins. These are proteins that you refer to as secreted by prokaryotes. They're made by prokaryotes, and they are toxic materials. So we call it exotoxin. Another group is referred to as endotoxin. These are already part of the structure of the membrane and the cell wall, okay? And they're toxic to the host. So they're not really made specially for that purpose. They are there, and they're toxic. All right, some examples. Clostridium is one of those that you can find a lot of times in canned food that has gone bad, and they are really, really, really poisonous. They kill very quickly. This is one of the most toxic material on the planet. Okay? And it affects the nervous system of the organs. Also, it's used for what? purifying ourselves because when it's injected in a minute amount, what it does is affects the nerve cells in those areas and then relaxes the muscle tissues. Okay? So, that's the effect. Save your money. Here you are. 30 more years from now? Yeah? Maybe so. And it's a very toxic material, but the effects go away, so you have to go back and do research to see where money goes like that. But where do they get it? From this bacteria. Okay? All right. Vibrio, the cholera is another disease that works with exotoxin, right? And that creates a really heavy-duty diarrhea and kills a lot of people in areas that either the water system is damaged, and like in Haiti, this became a big issue after the earthquake, and then they got a lot of rain and started to spread to people. Salmonella goes under this group, for an example, and that would be an endotoxin. This is important during Thanksgiving to pay attention to, right? I found it in poultry, in eggs, and so on. And high temperature kills it. That's why you want to monitor the temperature. That also can kill you. It's a good number of it. When you take your microbiology class, if you take the one that is geared toward nursing, you go through all kinds of diseases. If you take the one that goes toward biology majors, there's less diseases. Remember, okay? All right. Now, best defense against bacteria. We have a couple of problems that we need to talk about quickly. You have the past, bacteria killed a lot of people. Okay, infection will happen in the population and you die because of basic infections. But we have been able to control infection in a variety of ways. One of those is sanitation. Clean water, sewage system that doesn't mix, sewage with food and water and things like that. And through that we have reduced infection. Antibiotic, another important discovery, right? And this was discovered by an accident. A scientist whose brain was ready to actually pay attention, right? Growing bacteria, a microbiologist one day comes in and sees these microorganisms are not growing. How come? There are some fungus growing. Tested it, finds out that the fungus actually inhibits what? The growth of bacteria. There you have it. You figured out that they're producing something that kills bacteria, and now we have antibiotics. Okay. Since 1940s, we've been using antibiotics. And so when they discovered antibiotics, they thought, wow, great, this is magic bullet. We can get rid of infection. And then at the same time, we can put it in all kinds of things. Toothpaste, soap, whatever. And suddenly it turned out that we realized it's a bad idea because you're selecting for resistant bacteria. So the more antibiotics we use, the more you're putting that selective pressure, and you end up with bacteria that is resistant to that. And you learn how they pass these genes to each other, right? So now we have a huge problem. How many years later? 40s to 2010, right? 70 years doesn't mean that long, but we have big problem in our hospitals and all over the world. We have people who come in infected, and none of our antibiotics works. There are many strains of bacteria that are resistant to all of our antibiotics. So you don't want to be one of those unlucky people. Because you think, well, this is just a bacterial infection, but it kills you. Simple as that. Or I've seen situations that they had to amputate because the leg was infected just because of a spider bite. and then got spread, and then they had to cut the leg because nothing was working. Okay, make sense? Now, several things we can do, we should do in relation to this antibiotic resistant problem that we're not doing. And people who are really working at this are frustrated because they cannot convince populations to follow better practices, especially in farming. Okay, in farm industry, they feed animals that are healthy every day antibiotics. Chicken, pigs, cows, and things like that. Why? Because they gain weight a little bit faster, whatever that is, right? And but that is a huge amount of antibiotics that is being used. So researchers, they're pretty definite that that's a big force in terms of selecting for this antibiotic resistance. All right? They say, well, these antibiotics are different than the ones that humans use. The problem is the mechanism is the same. I'm going to talk about mechanism later, but so it doesn't make any difference. The way it works is the same as the ones that we use, and that's how they become resistant to it. All right? They spray fruits and things like that so bacteria doesn't grow. A huge problem. And so what you guys can do is to pay attention to this. And do what? Buy food that doesn't have antibiotics in it. Meat, poultry, things like that. And some of it is organic and they don't feed them. Some of it they feed them, but then they say you can't find traces in it. It's not as good. Yeah.
They're introducing also new regulations that are not allowing farmers to do that anymore. The FDA and the Department of Agriculture is kind of like.
Yeah, there's been a huge push. Yeah, it's been a huge push, and I don't know where that is. I've heard that
it's going to be on a national level.
Yeah, so that would be great because it's a huge problem, and it's that if they do that, it's solved part of the problem, a big portion of it. The other part is you guys that you need to educate other people, let them know. You yourselves should not be part of the problem, meaning if the physician gives you 10 days of antibiotics to take, people take 4 days, oh, they feel good, and they keep the rest of it for next time or for their cousins. Not a good idea, right? Finish it. Because that dosage is calculated so that it will kill pretty much the ones that are maybe partially resistant and they don't stay around, and you get rid of them. The other thing that is another issue that you guys need to pay attention to is all these antimicrobial agents now that is being sold in soaps and other things. Do you need all those? All you need is a little good soap and wash your hands enough, okay? With warm water, all you do is you release them and they're not there anymore. Same issue, if you use lots of antimicrobial agents, you're selecting for what?
Resistance.
Resistance. These agents, these chemicals should be left for hospitals, for places there's high traffic, pathogens and so on, and you don't need to use them in your showers and just simple washing, brushing, things like that will do the work.
Does that include hand sanitizer?
Yeah.
How does that mechanism?
Yeah, same thing. Same thing. So you're killing
It's kind of your own normal flora.
So yeah, so you're doing that, and as she said, at the same time you kill the good bacteria that is on your skin that out-competes the bad ones.
Yeah, it also ends up too, like, I mean, when it sterilizes your hand and then you come in contact with bad bacteria, then you just created your own petri dish that these things can now go on.
Yeah,
They become part of you.
because you don't have your own microbiota. So your body has lots of microorganisms. There is more microorganisms in your body than your own cells. Somebody presented that? I don't know if you did that, right? Yeah, it's a good article that he presented. So, but these are what? These are part of your system. A lot of them are beneficial, outcompete the bad guys. So when we use these things a lot, then you have problems. Sometimes if you take too much antibiotics, people can have other types of infections develop because the normal microbiota is not there. Fungus starts to take over, especially with females and things like that.
Yeast infections.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
So when you go to the doctor, you have like an ear infection and you use antibiotics completely, that you can finish the whole medication. Should you read or should you just stop?
No, don't stop. You should finish what they tell you to do. That's the idea.